We are now live. Hey everyone, my name is Josh and I'm the guy behind the free animal communication practice site, Speak Good Human. And one of the features on our site is Ask the Pros, where you can go to that page anytime you want and see the questions that others have asked and see what the pros have answered. And if you have your own questions, feel free to submit them there. This particular live broadcast is our Ask the Pros live feature, where we get to hear directly from one of the professionals and have them answer questions live for us. So that's what we're going to do this hour. We are here live with Lisa Larson, and she's an animal communicator and teacher in California. And she studied with some of the best ones in the field. She's studied with Carol Gurney and Teresa Wagner and Marta Williams. And she now works with clients all around the world. She teaches classes all throughout the year, and she has a new book called Pause Talking. And she might mention that in a second or two. But I wanted to also just say that she is a Reiki master, and she also has had a lot of the same issues that we have had as learners, and she understands the path that we take and we are taking. And so I think she's a great one to start answering some of the questions that you guys have submitted. So let's see. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. Do you want to I know your book just came out. Do you want to just say a little something about that before we get on?
Yay.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's my baby. That's Makana. And I lost him about just under 2 years ago, and he helped me write the book. So he's just the love of my life. And yeah, he was a big inspiration, and I thought she did a great job putting him on the cover. But yeah, it's called Pause Talking, a course in communicating with animals. And basically, when I started to write it after he passed, I would lay in bed and I'd think, it was always his and my time, because, my husband would go to sleep and it was always his and my quiet time. And I was so lonesome and everything. And I thought, well, I could sit here on Facebook and social media and messing around, or I could do something productive. So I went and I got myself one of those keyboards for my iPad, and I wrote the whole book lying in bed at night on my iPad. And I just, I sat there and I thought, well, what do I have to say? For a long time I thought, well, other people have written books, how-to books for animal communication, but so it stopped me for a long time. And then I thought, yeah, but they haven't, they don't have my experiences, and, I've got this class that I teach, and basically I put everything that I teach in class in the book in a step-by-step format. And I go all the way from what it is, the introduction, to professionalism. So if you really, really want to be a professional, what that entails in dealing with people and dealing with how to give information to people, and dealing with your website and your business. And, not everybody will be interested in those chapters, but up until then, it's a lot about, I've got stories in there. I did it mostly for people who wanted to learn how to communicate with animals, but the feedback I've gotten is that even if you don't want to learn how to telepathically communicate, it's good to help you understand animals, because I've been told, well, one word that somebody used was that I was unapologetic. That's how I feel about animals and how to treat them and how to look through their eyes. My big thing is helping people look through their eyes. So, yeah, I'm very proud of it. It was a long journey, but I'm very proud of it, and very proud that Makana was part of it.
Great. Well, good luck with it, and hopefully somebody out there will read it and do some good stuff.
Yeah, it's available on Amazon. So
okay. All right. Well, let's get to this first question. This one is coming from Elizabeth in Canada. And I'm going to read the long version so you can understand what she was coming from. She says, I've often heard communicators speak of feeling the energy of an animal to know when they're connected. And she says, I never feel anything. When I'm ready to communicate, I go through a routine of stating my intention and then start introducing myself. I'm never really sure that I'm connected until the answers start coming in. Is there a way to tune into that energy, or do you have any other suggestions to know when you're connected before beginning the communication?
Yeah, I like that she used that phrase tune in, because for me, when I hear what she's doing, it feels like she's skipping a step. Yes, meditate, yes, set your intention, but there's techniques that you do, and one of the techniques, in fact, one of the techniques I explain in depth in my book, is when you raise your vibration, because everybody's going to meditate and have a technique. Hopefully they have a technique to raise their vibration, and this can be done through visualization, or visualizing walking up stairways or going up in a balloon. There's a lot of different people have different ways. Raising your vibration, what I do is, once I raise my vibration, I imagine, and this is just one way, I imagine a radio dial. The old radio dials where you're going through static, and then you go back, and then you go a little bit further, and then you finally tune down to, I got it. And what I do with that is, when I raise my vibration, I'm very aware of what my vibration is. When I start that radio dial, I set the intention of the animal coming in from my peripheral vision. And I set that radio dial and set the intention that the animal is going to connect with that tuning in. And I actually even see the animal when I feel it lock in. There's a point when I'm I'm not doing it with my hand, but there's a point when it goes smaller and smaller, and it locks in. There's a point that I actually feel the two vibrations, because vibrations will go like this, like here's his vibration, here's my vibration, and they'll be doing the waves and doing this, and then all of a sudden it's like it feels like a hum when I connect. And it's a matter of starting to be very attuned to what that vibration, if you're attuned to what your vibration feels like, then you can understand what the animal's vibration feels like, and you can feel that link when it locks in. And then when I feel that link lock in, I actually even see the animal step out of that radio dial and in my peripheral vision and walk towards me. And how that animal walks towards me will tell me a lot about the animality, felinality, caninality, equinality of the animal itself. So if they come running up, hi, they're real friendly. If they're back here and they're kind of timid, then that's going to tell me, and that gives me my first link to who this animal is and what their basic makeup is. But it's really about it's about those words, tuning in. It's don't skip that step. Don't just set the intention and start talking. Make sure that you create something that you are tuning in and feeling that vibration lock in.
Interesting. So if they do that, they should be able to feel something, and that's what
you're
talking about. Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a radio dial. I mean, like, for instance, I used to be a musician, and I was a guitar player. So sometimes there's a technique from tuning your guitar that's the same way. You pluck two strings at the same time, and you tune until both those strings are playing the same note. In other words, vibrating at the same rate, because that's what playing a note is. Uh-huh. And so, in fact, that's a good like example that, if you know somebody that plays guitar or something, have them show you what that feels like, what it sounds like, because you can actually feel it. And if it could be anything. If you have a particular interest in something that has some kind of vibrational wave, you can create anything. I just, usually the radio thing is something that a lot of people can relate to and stuff. But yeah, you definitely, I never will talk to an animal, unless we're just doing something real quick or something, but, that's my process. I make sure to tune in to the animal and feel the animal's connection, feel the animal's energy before I ever introduce myself, before I ever get to questions, before I ever do anything else. Because that's the point that helps me really understand who the animal is.
Okay. And would you use that same technique in the moment if you were, let's say, on a radio program or just meeting an animal right away in like on the street? Would you have to
Yeah, it's a little harder. You can. I mean, usually this is through a meditation. When you're just doing something like I do these things at a place called Dexter's Deli. We used to do some it's a pet food store in San Diego. It's a great natural food place in San Diego. And they would have a panel of communicators. And then afterwards we would do little communications, short communications for charity and stuff. And in that case, I think learning how to do that other stuff, learning how to do it by visualizing helps when you have to step into doing it quickly, because then you can kind of in your mind, you don't have to take all the time to do it, but it's a much more direct process once you've had a lot of experience doing it with that other way. I wouldn't start the other way though.
Okay. Yeah, and that's probably where she is, and you're right. She should just need to go back and start working on the other step, the middle step.
The middle step. And it's not like I don't use the middle step all the time for my private communications. The only time I don't is if I'm put on the spot and I have to just quickly go, okay, let's feel what this is, and then you're just kind of, what's your energy? What's his energy?
Great. Okay. Next question is from Ruchi in India. And she says, I just started learning animal communication a few months ago, but I picked it up very quickly and I found that I'm very accurate. But if someone asks me to communicate for money, fear sets in and I begin to question my accuracy. How do I overcome my anxiety?
Well, that's kind of an easy one, and don't do it for money yet. I am fully on the page of, you wouldn't go to a doctor that had just started to learn medicine a few months ago.
Right.
I mean, when I started doing this, I had created a forum, like you, so older type.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and that was my way of doing it, because I was living in a rather conservative little community, and I was like, after I'd taken all these classes, I'm like, how am I going to practice? And I worked on that forum. I talked to probably 4 to 6 animals a day, probably 5 to 6 days a week. Wow. And I did that for 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
3 to 4 years. You shouldn't be going professional until you have had so much experience with so many different types of things and situations that people are going, you really, 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 really have to do this professionally. You should not be doing that until people are over and over and over again telling you, and that's what happened to me. I mean, I was actually a college professor, and then I had for a couple of years, people had been telling me I should, and I was like, I don't think so. And then in the crash, I lost my job, and then I just never started looking again because people just started calling me. When you're ready to go professional, it will happen. And and that's one of the things, like I said, that I pointed out in my book is that, you know, I don't pull any punches about what it's like to be a professional. A lot of people think, oh yeah, great, I'm going to make some extra money and I'm going to do this I'm going to do this for a living. This is not an easy life. First of all, you're not going to make a whole lot of money, and you are going to have to do everything unless you were to get, huge, which really there's nobody, as far as there's mediums that are like that, but not animal communicators. No. But you have to do your own websites. You have to do your own scheduling. You have to, if I got paid for all the work that I did and all the time that I'm on the phone just scheduling and talking to people and explaining, I'd be a very rich woman. It's a minute amount of time that I'm actually talking to animals. Mm-hmm. A very short amount of time. But the thing is, after you have had all of this experience, then you can start feeling more comfortable. And even then, I would say start with not charging very much. First of all, I would say if you really want to go professional, then you put the word out there and you say, okay, I'm going to do free readings for this, until I feel really, 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 really comfortable doing free readings. Mm-hmm. And doing it as you would a professional. I mean, I've got 2 students currently in my certificate program, and their thing is, my certificate program is you have to do 50 case studies at least with different types of things. You have to have so many missing animal cases, so many animal and spirit cases, so many behavioral, so many illness, because unless you're able to do that, you're going to have a problem, and you're always going to doubt yourself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I think it's really, really important that people understand that it's not something that you just jump into. And the more you do it free, you do it free for a while, and then you charge just a very little bit for a while, and then you can raise. Now, when you do that, if you charge a little bit and raise your prices, incrementally, that's one way to do it, because then it is harder to raise. It is hard to raise prices. You can jump in and go for the average of what people are doing, but you really, really need to have done all of that stuff prior to that. You have to have had all of the experience prior to that.
Okay. That all makes sense. So keep your day job, practice a lot, and then
yes.
feel how it goes, and you'll know when the right time is to start charging.
Absolutely.
Okay. If you just tuned in, now we're here with Lisa Larson, an animal communicator, and we are asking questions, and she's given us some great answers. And this next question is from Joe in UK, and this one is, what do you do when either you don't know what to ask the animal, or when you get nothing from them?
So I actually have a student that this is one of her problems, and one of the things that you can do is have questions at the ready. When I teach a class, I give a list of practice questions that they can have at the ready so that you have an idea of what you're going to talk about. But the other thing is that it's really important, and I don't know how other communicators do this or how other communicators teach, but it's really, really important to think of it as a conversation. I don't ever really go in and just pepper an animal with questions. I think of it as a conversation. You wouldn't just meet somebody at a party and say, so I hear you've been having some urinary tract issues. You wouldn't just jump into something like that. So So I look at this as a conversation. I want to make sure that the animal is trusting me before I get into things. And that's, I mean, like that one woman said, introducing herself and such. Now, if you get into it and you think that you've done your link and your radio dial and all of that, and you're still not getting anything, then I would take a step back and I would relink. I would take a step back and I would do that, another quick meditation or another quick radio dial or connection. Whatever your process is for the connection, I would do another quick one like that, because if you're not getting any information, it's probably that you've lost the link.
Okay. That sounds good. I'm sure there's lots of other reasons why they may not be getting it. They just could have a block for it, or.
Well, yeah, there could be, like, for instance, if you're doing something let's say you're doing something live, like I do. Yeah. Some animal communicators will just get the information and then they'll talk to the animal. And then they'll call you back and tell you what they got, or they'll email you. Right. I personally have you on the phone because I feel like this is, you're part of the process. Now, if there is somebody that on the other end of the phone that's blocking me, they're a skeptic, they're cynical, they're no. Then definitely that's going to block the energy. Okay. Usually at this stage, it's not usually like that. Are there times when animals can be shy and not want to talk? Sure, but then there are ways around that. If you get an animal that you feel is a little shy, first of all, you're always, especially at that point, you're going to ask their permission. But you can always ask them, explain to them, look, I'm just learning how to talk to animals, and it's really important to me because it helps the animals, and it helps animals have a better relationship with their people. Talk to the animal about it. Say, can you help me? Put the animal in a position of them being able to say yes or no. But even if they say no, you're going to hear it. It's not just radio silence. Okay. So you can have some techniques to do that, but generally it's not going to be it's not going to be something, it's generally not going to be on their end. Mm-hmm. Okay. If there's a block, usually it'll be coming from the person. Mm-hmm. But there are animals who are just more quiet. Mm-hmm. Than other people, and they take a little bit more finessing. Everybody has met people at a party or wherever where you're just I'm working really hard here, working really hard to start a conversation here. But then you find that one thing that you say that kind of opens them up. Mm-hmm. Well, animals are just like people in that way. Some are just like, woo-hoo, how you doing? Yeah, before you even introduce yourself. And others just need a little bit more finessing to do it. But again, you have to feel like you have that link. And I'm going to say one other thing is that when that happens, I too wonder if people are just doubting themselves. Uh-huh. If they are hearing something and they are dismissing it because they're doubting themselves. Yeah. So you always want to check yourself to make sure that you're not dismissing something that you're getting. Yeah. And then you think you're not getting anything. Yeah.
And then if you want to get over it, I guess what you would do is just say, let's just assume that I am getting that, even though I doubt it. Let's just assume for now that I am getting it, and let's move forward.
Yeah, because you're going to get the validations anyway. Yeah. And the thing is, there is a fear. I think some people may have a fear of, well, if I get anything at all, then it might be wrong. Mm-hmm. So maybe they have that little fear. But you know what? Especially at that level, when you're learning, this isn't brain surgery. Okay. Nobody's going to die. If you get something that you don't get a validation for, I don't even like to say that you got something wrong, because you don't know that something was wrong. You just know that you didn't get a validation for it. Right. Maybe you misinterpreted the information or whatever. But if you do, nobody's going to die. We're talking about, at that point, we're talking about how they like their home, how they like their toys, what do they like to do, what do they like to eat, Right. I mean, as it gets later on, you end up getting into some very serious things when you're helping animals cross, when you're asking them if they're ready to go, and stuff like that. But then that goes back to that first question or that other question about don't start doing it professionally too quickly.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. Let's move along to James in Chicago, who says, animal communication often feels like an invisible process, and the quality and amount of information that comes through feels out of my control. Like I am stuck with whatever comes through, and there's no way to upgrade the experience like I would be able to when working on other skills, like learning a sport, for example. How do I increase accuracy and control?
I found this question interesting, and in that he mentioned that it's not like sports, and I'm going to say it is.
Oh.
It's practice, 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 practice.
Okay.
The more you practice, the more you the more you don't feel like you have to force it. I mean, anybody that is if you try to control something, if you try to say, well, what did he say? He gets information, that it's an invisible process, and the quality of the information that comes through feels out of the control. I was a little confused when I read that, because I'm not the one to judge the quality of the information. Mm. For me, when I get information, it's just information.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's good information, bad information. All information is just information. Mm-hmm. Now, what I do with it, how I respond to it, how I interpret it, and moreover, how I present it to the pet parent is something completely different.
Okay.
But information is information. You have to trust the information, trust whatever information you get, don't doubt that information, and the more you do that, and the more you get validation, and I'm going to add that in the practice, mm-hmm. validation, because if you don't get validation, if you don't consistently get validation, then you're not going to be able to trust yourself, and you're not going to be able to trust the information. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I teach classes, I have people, write their readings in a little notebook, and I hand out little paw stickers, but you could get like a highlighter, the little stars that you had in grammar school, and put them down, put a little highlighter sticker every time you get a yes, because then when you start doubting yourself, you can go back and look at that book and say, I got this. Mm-hmm. The problem is, so many times we'll get 10 yeses and 1 no, and the only thing that we consider is the no.
That is true.
We're just focused on that no. Right. There's never going to be a communicator that is 100% accurate 100% of the time. And anybody that tells you otherwise, a psychic, medium, communicator, anybody that tells you they're 100% accurate, do not, just run away. Mm-hmm. Run far, far away, because there's no way. It's not a science. It's not a science. But, it's interesting that he used that sports metaphor, because I wrote a blog post once about, how people expect communicators to be 100% accurate 100% of the time. Right. So if we get one thing wrong, it means we're a fraud.
Right.
But if you look at Michael Jordan, on an average day, he was making 4 out of 10 shots.
Right.
And he was the best ever. On a good day, 7 out of 10. Mm-hmm. And that's the best ever. So my goal in being a communicator is to be better on my worst day than most people are on their best day.
Okay, that's a good goal.
Yeah, because you're never going to be 100%. You're going to get no's, and you need to, first of all, you need to know not to know to sit with a no. You need to know how to talk to the person and make sure they're not just going no, 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 or they're not saying no too quickly, or they're not misunderstanding what you're saying, because sometimes semantics plays a role.
Right.
And so there's a way that you can do things, and I actually run a live practice session once a month, and we had this conversation on Monday.
Oh.
Yeah, it was about, when you get that no, you don't just stop. If you're getting the information really strongly, because there's a difference between information that comes in strongly and information that comes in, I'll say this in readings all the time. I tell people, some information comes in and it's just kind of, whatever, and I just kind of let it go. So it just doesn't seem that, if I get a no on that, that's fine. If it's important, it'll come back. Then there's the other information that, man, it comes in like a gangbuster, and it's just like a snapshot in front of my face. I'm not going to let that go. And most time they don't let me let it go. The animal doesn't let me let it go.
Well, let me ask you though, since you gave that as an example, let me just guess at what James might have been thinking about the quality of information. Let's say there's 5 people in the class and they are all communicating with the same animal, and they all get varying degrees of information. Some is more detailed, which is maybe what he was talking about, the quality of and the accuracy. And some people get maybe something much more simple or less detailed. Is that just all about practice then?
So my answer to that, and I get that question a lot, is if you go into a party and there's one person that's, let's say the host, and 5 different people go up and have separate conversations with the host, are they always going to be talking about the same thing?
Nope.
No.
It might be a variation, probably.
It could be a variation. Some things could be repeated. Some things you might go off in a completely different direction based on your frame of reference. Some people might be really good at getting all of the specifics, the little, my bowl was blue, or something. Other people might be really, really good at getting who the animal is, what the feeling of the animal is. And my experience, because I'm much more that way, and not that I don't get a lot of evidence, but it's my experience is when I tell the person who the animal is, what that felinality is, that's when they go, oh yeah, that's exactly who he is. Mm-hmm. Because that's who they know.
Yes. Okay.
And we can get these great bits of evidence, and that's nice, but people tend to dismiss feeling things, clairsentient type things, as not being clear evidence. Uh-huh. But it is. As long as the person you're reading for understands it, you don't have to. And that's why I was talking about, I don't really listen to the quality, because there's things that come in and I like, really? You want me to say that to this person? There was one time, a lot of times when I'm speaking with an animal in spirit, I will get like little things right at the end where it's, if you see this is me saying hello type of thing. And right at the end of this reading, we had a great reading, and I told this woman I got this big flash of purple. And I said, I asked her about it, and she says, well, purple's not my favorite color, there's nothing in the house. And I was like, okay, well, let me ask one more question, then we'll just leave it. And I asked, can you give me anything else about that? And the dog said, or the cat said, penguin. What? I'm purple penguin? You want me to tell this purple person purple penguin? But if you get it, you have to give it. So I gave it to her. We couldn't figure it out. Ha ha ha. I told her, if a logo, a card comes in a purple penguin or purple in the background, whatever, if you got a logo with a purple penguin, it's his way of saying, I'm here. 2 days later, she says, okay. She emails me and she says, I thought that I was going to start writing in a journal like you told me to, and I was going to keep it in this real pretty box that I have under the bed. I pulled out the box, and the box was purple. Thought, okay, that's interesting. I don't want to put too much into it, but I knew I had to clean it out. I opened it up, and there were a bunch of National Geographics, and there on the top was a penguin.
Oh, wow. How interesting.
So you don't know. You can't judge the quality of the information. It may mean nothing to you. But the minute you say it to them, they understand it.
Yeah.
So because the minute you get into judging the information is the minute you get into your head.
Yeah.
And that blocks the rest of the information coming in.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Great. Let's see here. Lauren from Texas says, I find there are so many interpretations to questions I ask the animals that I'm not sure if the answers are correct. For example, when I'm asking a dog if she likes water, you could show her a hose and she'd say no, because she associates it with a bath. If you showed her a pond, she'd say yes. How do you ask the question to elicit a specific answer? That's
really easy. Number one, don't ask them yes/no questions, and ask them instead of giving them an image. Don't ask. I forget how she said it, but I would say, "How do you like water?" Not "Do you like water?" How do you like water? You might get a yes or a no, I don't like it, or they may show you, all of a sudden they'll show you swimming in a pond, or they'll show you nipping at a hose. But don't give them the image, let them give you the image.
What if you you wanted to be more specific? Like why don't you like drinking your water? Or is that already a specific?
Well, no, that's a little different than what she says. But yes, I mean, then you're asking a specific question. Okay. You're asking you're giving them a specific situation because it's a behavior. Because there's a difference between a behavior and just what they like.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if you're asking, why don't you like drinking water? Now, that's a real touchy one because, like, for instance, I had somebody contact me once and she says, will you please tell my cat to drink more water? Well, I can tell your cat to drink more water, but cats just don't drink water if you're feeding them, if they're getting their water elsewhere. And if there's a problem, then you need to figure out how to give them more moisture, like tuna juice or chicken juice or something like that. You can't ask, you can ask, but you can't expect an animal to do something against their very nature. Now, if you go into something like that, why are they drinking so much water? That would be more of a question, that it would be a more common question. Why are they drinking so much water? Of course, the first thing is take them to the vet. Right. But, then you're saying you're looking at a health issue. Then it pops over into looking at a health issue. But if you're really just, how do you like this or how do you like that? There's a big difference between behavior and just what they are inclined to do. So it's just about knowing how to ask. Like I say, it's like doing an interview. You don't put words in their mouth, you don't ask yes or no questions that stops the conversation. You ask open-ended questions. How do you feel about this? Yes, you can ask, why aren't you drinking your water? And then just accept whatever the answer is, but you're not necessarily, I guess some people would put that as an image. I would just ask it. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you drinking your water? Why is there something you don't like about your water?
Okay.
There's a lot of different ways that you can phrase questions to elicit different types of answers.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. Yes. We have about 20 minutes left. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Lisa Larson about animal communication and learning this awesome language. And in a few more minutes, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask her live, then please feel free to write it into the chat area, and we'll get to those. We may not get to all the questions today, and if not, we will answer them probably on the Ask the Pros page on Speak Good Human, and you'll be able to read it there. So I'm going to move along here and see how many we can get through here. This next question, I'm going to skip a few because this one is kind of interesting, is how do you deal with information from an animal that their person may not want to hear?
Yeah.
That's from
I have a whole chapter on this in my book. This is how important this is to me. I dedicated a whole chapter to it. Working with people. You really have to know how to talk to people. The information that you get from an animal is useless if you cannot present it to the person in a way that they can accept. And sometimes it's a real tightrope. And I don't know that there's any one answer because everything is going to be situational. But let's say that you clearly see that the person's energy is affecting the behavior of the animal. I mean, there are people that I've done where my whole back, my hands hurt when I just get on the phone with them because their energy is so, and maybe this is a peeing problem or something like that. And the more that they get ramped up about the animal peeing, the more the animal pees, because the animal gets, animals are so connected to their person's energy. And, when I do a reading, I always consider that, I always tell my people, I look at this as either, a negotiation, a family negotiation, family therapy, because it's never just about telling the animal to do or not to do something. It's about looking at the whole, looking at the household, looking at what is going on with the person. So sometimes you have to be very, very careful and be able, you have to have good people skills. Yeah. You have to be able to judge where their line is and how open they are to certain things. And one of the techniques that I will do is if I see that they're, being resistant, because some people it's okay. Some people you just say, "Can I be blunt?" and they're going, "Yeah, sure," and they're just open to it. Other people are really resistant to it. And when I feel that resistance, what I will do is I will find something in my own life that I have done similarly to that person so that they can understand I'm not making a judgment on them. So in other words, this actually happened last week. I was talking to somebody, the cat was peeing a lot, and I was saying, it's the fact that you're kind of focused in on it. You're so focused in on it. I don't remember if this was peeing or fighting, but you're focused in on it. And every time this happens, your energy level is going like this. And she said, "Well, but what if it was fighting. It was two cats fighting." And she says, "Well, what if we had this conversation and I have to go out in a few hours, That's fine. And I don't judge her for feeling that way at all, because, you care about your cats. You want to know what the best thing to do. But she was getting really like that. And so what I do is I find something in my memory banks, and I told her, my cat used to, every once in a while, he'd get real aggressive and he would jump up and grab me. And for a while, I was getting a little like this around him. And then one day my husband came in. He did it to me in the hallway. The cat did it to me in the hallway, and my husband was standing behind the cat, and he stopped and he says, "Look at yourself. I'm the animal communicator." But he says, "Look at yourself. Look at how tense you are."
Mm-hmm.
And I had to sit down and go, yeah, I am. And then the minute I took some breaths, the cat calmed down.
Okay.
So my technique for doing that, if you run up against that, is make sure that you're not judging them, because it is totally understandable that, if they're fighting, peeing, all of these things, that people are going to get really, really upset and not know how to deal with it and get frustrated. It's normal. It's human. So I want to make sure that I'm validating them, that I understand how they feel, that they have every right to feel that way. And then I give them an example from my own life when I did the same thing. Yep. Because pretty much usually all of us have gotten to that level of frustration.
Yes.
And then you can give them some techniques to calm down, or breathing techniques, whatever you want to do, but validate and commiserate. Okay. And let them know that they aren't alone, that even the animal communicator has those problems.
That sounds great. That's good advice. Probably what any therapist would do as well. Let's do one more, and then I'll check to see if there are any live questions.
Okay.
This one is pretty common. It's probably one of the most common that I hear. And it's, how do you know you're not making it all up?
Oh, yeah, that's practice and validation. That's practice and validation, because, well, first of all, you need to, it's not just the practice in the talking, it's the practice in learning how to truly empty your mind. This is the one job that I had. Like I say, I used to teach college for 15 years. And when I would have a problem, have an argument, have, a loss, whatever kind of personal problems, I could get to work, and I could stand up at the podium and open my notebook, and I could fill my head up with all of this other stuff, so that I wouldn't have to think about my stuff. Well, animal communication is not that way. You have to, with animal communication, any kind of psychic work, you have to dump your stuff. I mean, really dump it. And being able to do that takes a lot of discipline, a lot of focus, and a lot of practice, and a lot of meditation. So it's about really practicing in your meditations, practicing emptying your mind, and practicing focusing on, that specific thing, focusing on that animal. And as long as you have that link and you're really focused on that animal, you should be fine. But what the problem is, then you've got your self-doubt, because then your mind starts working. Well, that couldn't be right. That couldn't be right. Mm-hmm. If it comes in, you write it. If you're not doing it live, you either say it if you're live, but if you're, most of your people are probably doing it not live. But the minute it comes in, you write it down, you let it go. Write it down, let it go. Write it down, let it go. Write it down, let it go. Worry about the validations later. Don't even consider it. Don't think about this. Kind of goes back to that that other question. Oops. I was hearing a feedback there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if on Facebook. Sorry about that. I was trying to see if there's any other questions queuing up. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So you let the information come in and you let it go. Do not hold on to that information, because all the time you hold on to that information, you're preventing other information from coming in. The next step then is getting the validation. The more you get that validation, use that notebook, use those little stars, use the highlighters, because the more you get that validation, the more you learn to trust yourself. The only way to learn to not doubt yourself and to learn to trust yourself is to get validation and over and over and over and over again, so that you know that what you got, so that you know what you felt like. So like when you got that information, it's that feeling of when somebody says, yes, exactly. I have, he explained, a green toy or something, whatever, yes, it's the only green toy I have in my house. I hate green. It's the only thing. And my brother gave it to us and, he went away, whatever. There's this like long story to it. It's really meaningful to them. But you may not know it, and the minute you get that validation and you go, oh, wow, great, that's a validation, then you want to think back, what did it feel like to get that message? Because there's a specific feeling when you get a hit. There's a specific feeling that you have with it. So when you give something to someone and they validate it, you want to think back, just quickly in your mind, think back, what did it feel like? Imagine getting that information, think back what that felt like. Because the more you do that as you go on, that's what makes the information stronger. When I was talking about some of the information is just kind of and others is like really right there, like a snapshot. The more you do that, the closer you get to that snapshot phase. Because then you really, really know what it feels like, and you really, really know how to trust it. So practice, empty your mind, practice validation. Mm-hmm. Let the information come in, let it go, then get it. Don't worry about the validation until you're at the point of validation.
Okay. That sounds great. I couldn't figure out, let's see. Well, oh, here is a question. Here's a live question for you. This is from Jane. Do you approach speaking with a pet in spirit differently than one who is still alive?
Good question. That's Jane?
Jane.
Hi, Jane. So no, not necessarily. I mean, energy is energy is energy is energy is energy. So we're still connecting with energy. The difference between connecting with an animal in spirit is just the things that you talk about. You're still making the connection the same way. You're still meditating, doing your connection, your radio dial, however you do it. You're still doing the introductions and everything like that, and you're still connecting to the energy. But it's having an understanding that the spirit energy is going to be a higher vibration. So you really, really need to be able to raise your vibration, because, spirit is lowering theirs as you're raising yours, and we meet someplace in the middle. I always kind of joke that they come a lot farther for me than I go for them. But a lot of the spirit stuff is just the things that you're asking them, so spirit, you're going to ask things like, well, I do. This is what I teach. I don't know how other people do it. But I ask things like, soul, what was the reason you were in your person's life? Why did you have to leave so soon? What are your soul contracts? Things like reasons that they came together. Well, they're still in body. They may not know that. There's just a handful of animals that I've spoken with that know that. But in spirit, especially after they've been in spirit a little while longer, because if you talk with animals in spirit a day later, they're going to have different information than they are a month later or a year later, because they're going to have more of a I can't think of the word. They process their life more. It's like moving to another country. The day after you leave, if somebody says, "Are you going to come back?" they're not even thinking about coming back yet. And that's one of the questions a lot of people ask is, are they going to come back to me? Yeah. So, the day after, they may not know that. They may not know all of these things because they're still so connected to their physical life. Right. Doesn't mean that you can't talk to them. I mean, animals in spirit is my specialty. It doesn't mean that I've talked to them like within seconds of them leaving and 30 years later. So it doesn't matter the time. But as far as the connection goes, again, I can't speak for other communicators. I connect exactly the same way. I do my meditation. I do the tuning in and connect with the energy.
Okay.
And hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. We are taking live questions now, and I'm not sure, I don't see any others, but I was having some issues with seeing the feed. So if you're out there and you're watching and you have a live question for Lisa, type it in right now. Otherwise, we'll move along to a couple other questions that I have that we can ask her. One of them, Lisa, was about finding lost pets, and somebody enjoys doing that, or it's one of the things she's learning, but she's finding that she's only found a few of them so far, which I still think even a few is pretty good.
That's really good.
But do you have any tips for how to find lost or missing animals?
Yeah, well, I will say that I no longer do them anymore. A lot of communicators don't, for a couple of different reasons. Some people don't do it just because they're hard. You know, by the time you look for somebody and tell them where they are, they've moved on. Right. I don't do it just because I don't have that shut off my emotions gene, you know, and I get too involved emotionally with the people who are, have lost their pet, because I've been there. That said, I've had a lot of success with it when I first started. I will do it still for my clients who I know, who I've been working with them a long time. But my thing about missing animals is that just what you said, that's pretty good. You have to understand that not all animals are going to be found. Even people who specialize in this, like that's their specialty, like animals and spirit is my specialty, not all animals are going to be found. Not all animals even want to be found. Not all animals can be found. Yeah. So the best that you can do is do the best that you can do. Give them the information. I mean, clearly you're doing well. You know, if you've already found some, you're doing well. And it sounds like this person already knows the techniques. I mean, there's certainly the first techniques that I use the first thing that you want to do, and this is more, I'm sure, more for other people than for this person, because I'm sure this person knows that. The person that asked that question knows this already. But the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you feel that the animal, whether the animal is in body or animal is in spirit. Right. And so you're going to want to have, there's different techniques. I always use at least three. One is I will look at a road. One is going to go off to my right and up, and one is going to go straight to the left, and I ask the animal which way they went. And if they go up, they may not be in body anymore. If they go straight, they're in body. And that's your own technique? That, like, you labeled those roads that way? Yeah, you can label the roads however you want. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can label the roads however you want. But that's, I don't remember if I got that from another teacher or not. I've been using it so long. But yeah, so, you know, some people will use I don't personally, does the energy feel heavy or does the energy feel very light? Yeah. You know, if they're light, they're in spirit. I don't usually use that one. The other two that I use is image of a candle flickering and a breeze and the candle going like this. Does the candle stay lit or does the candle go out? Oh. And the third one I really like is I imagine a flower bud and then I imagine it opening. And if it just opens to a pretty flower, the animal is still alive. If it keeps on opening and it to the point that it falls over, the animal is in spirit. And who's sort of making those images happen for you? Is it the animal? My guides. Okay. I'm connecting with my guides. And it's not something that, you know, it's not something that I consider my guides, like I don't consider them my go-between, but I know they're there, that when I need that help. You know, when you're asking the animal to go, when, you know, the road one, you're asking the animal. Okay. to show you. You can also say, you know, you're standing at the road, which way do you feel pulled, or, you know, so there's lots of different techniques with that. But I mean, as far as what she was asking, you know, it really is understanding that not everybody's, it goes back to 100%, you know, and that goes double with missing animals, because it's just not going to be every single person, and that's why a lot of communicators don't do it. Yeah. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, so unless you have that gene that you can kind of shut things down. I mean, there's a woman that I refer to quite a lot, and I've gotten feedback from my clients about her, and they say, yeah, she was helpful, but she wasn't as nice as you. You know, so, you know, I mean, and that's fine, you know, not that she wasn't a nice person, but she's a little gruff and I'm a little bit more touchy-feely.
Right.
And but that's what makes her be able to do missing animals and me not so much. Yeah. You know, because I just, boy, it's tough. But that's the biggest tip that I can get is having an understanding that they're not all going to be found, that you're going to have, you know, and I would suggest talking to somebody who does, you know, calling somebody like Carol Gurney, who does a lot of missing animals, and finding out what her percentage is. Finding out somebody who does this all the time, find out what their percentage is and compare yours. I hate to say that, compare, but, you know, understand, by hearing that, you'll understand that even they don't find everybody.
Right.
Which will help you understand that you can still do this work, but it's not always going to end happy.
Right. And that's why not everybody likes to do it.
And that's why not everybody likes to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time today, but Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. This was really, really enlightening. So many great answers and so many different perspectives. I'm sure everybody's going to be all jazzed up and ready to go again.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Your website is right down there, pausetalk.net, and you've got your new book out, Pause Talking.
Yay! Let me show you my baby again.
It's full of how-tos and how to do this skill and this technique. So if you're still looking for that magic way, this might be it.
Hopefully so. Well, thank you, Josh. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this, and I hope it answers some questions for people out there. And you know, anybody out there, my website is there. If you have other questions, I'm going to be giving an online class next month, and an in-person class the month after that. So I do give online classes through Zoom, and much like this, where it's kind of fun because everybody can. You know, we have animals walking across, and you know, everybody's in their comfort of their own home. So, so if you have any other questions, concerns, please do contact me. I'm happy to answer any questions and help you out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everybody.